Hello everyone. I hope everyone is doing great. So I'm back with another video on this in the C++ project playlist. So what we are going to do today is that we are going to make a student management system. It would be a program which would include file handling, and it would have the following functionalities, in which our first function would be to display all the students. Our next function would be to search a student. Our next function then would be to find the student with the maximum CGPA, and the next two functions would be to sort the student by name, sorted by their CGPA, and our last function would be to add a new student and save it to the current file along with updating the current file. So now let's start with our program. I would be using VS Code as my editor. So as far as the text file is concerned, so this would be our text file, student.txt. It contains around a list of 453 students with different CGPAs, different roll numbers, degree programs, phone numbers, their identity, CNIC identity numbers. So we would be reading data from this file and then performing the functions on our file then accordingly. So now let us create a new file in our project folder. So I would name is at SMS student management system.cpp. So first of all, I need to include the necessary headers for the following. So our necessary headers would be we would be including the IO string, then I would be including the F string for file handling, and then I also would be including the string class so that I could perform operations using the string character, using the string variable. And now our last header would be to include the string to perform operations on the string class. So this would be it. Now we would be using the namespace. Yeah, so this would be the pretty much the start of our program. So now I can move on to declare an array with size of around 500 so that it caters to add students also. Uh, so we would be doing it by declaring it above our class as a const variable of integer type with its size of 500. Yeah, so as we have declared the size of our array, now I would be moving on to declaring my class. I would be naming my class the student. So what I can do now is that I would be creating the memory variables of it. So I would just use public as an access modifier, no private or no protected members for the class, only public members for the class. So our first variable should be member would be string name, and what we are the next would be our degree program of type string. Our next function would be our roll number, which would be of type integer. Uh, then we would move on to the CGPA of type float, and the last two would be our CNIC and the phone number, which would both be of type string. So if you're wondering from where I have decided to choose these member variables, so these are from the following headings, as we have the name of a student, then we have its CNIC, its roll number, CGPA, program, and phone. So now I would be creating the member functions for the relevant class. So our first function would be to show all students. So in this function we would be passing an array of objects along with the size of the array. Yeah, so our next function would be to search by the roll number. And in this, I would again be passing the same arguments as of the show all students function, but we would be making a slight change as we would be adding the roll number 2 to find what student has this exact same roll number in our uh, text file. So our next function would be to find the maximum CGPA. So it would be again of type void. I would be passing it the same arguments. And the next function what we would be creating is to sort the students by name. So sorting by name with the same arguments, and our next function would be to sort by CGPA, the same arguments, and our last function of the program, not the last, the second last function would be to add a new student. So in this again we would be passing the same arguments, but we would be passing the size not by value, but we would be passing the size by reference, so that it is different from this the original size, not copying the same size everywhere. So our last function should be to save the students to the file, in which we would be saving the students to the file and updating the file so that it reflects our changes. So I would name it as void with return type void save students to file. So basically in this I would be passing the same arguments, but I would also be passing the name of the file, which would be of type string, and it should be by reference. Yeah, so pretty much I'm done with our program by declaring the following member functions and all the other relevant things that were needed to be created. Okay, so now moving on. Now I would be declaring the following functions that we have. So I would start off by declaring this student show the show all students function. So to declare a function outside a class, you need to write the return type first, and then you need to write the name of your class, and then using the globe scope operator, you need to choose your following function, the name of the function, and then you need to pass it its arguments that were already passed in the class that you declared. So what we need to do in this function is that just a minute. There is a bit problem. I have declared the wrong. Yeah. So what we need to do now is that we need to display all the name of the students along with their properties such as their roll number, their CGPA, etc. So for that we can run a for loop that would run from I is equals to 0 till I is less than the current size and I plus plus. So what we can do in this is that I would see out the following properties such as the name of the student, which would be the name at the ith index, and then I would add a space, and then we can print the CNIC of the student. That would be the CNIC at the array's ith index. So then again include a space, and the next thing what we would be printing is the roll number of the student. So roll number of the student, which would be the roll number at the ith index. And the next thing what we would be printing is the CGPA. So CGPA would be the CGPA at the ith index. CGPA, and the second last thing which we need to print is a degree program, then followed by the last one which would be the phone number of the student. So degree program, which would be, and lastly what I need to print is the phone number of the student. So phone number of the student. Yes, this would be this phone number at the ith index. Sorry, I did not declare phone as a variable of type string. Yeah, so now what we would be doing is that, yeah, so it would be string dot phone, and now I would place an end line so that it prints the next line with the following things. Yeah, so now we are pretty much done with our function, and now what we need to do is that we need to move on to a next function, which would be to search a student by its following roll number. So how we would be doing that is that we would again be running a for loop, and in that we will run an if statement that if the roll number entered by the user is equals to the roll number which is found in the text file, so it will print out that following details of the student, which would be the same details as in the show all students function. So to do this, what we need to do is we need to again declare a function which would be search by roll number. I need to pass it the relevant arguments. So what we need to do in this function is that what I can also do in another case is that I could declare a bool variable found which I can equals to false, and then I can run a for loop at current I is equals to 0, I is less than current size, I plus plus. So now inside this for loop I can place a check that if the roll number at students ith index is equals to the roll number entered by the user, so I would put found equals to true, and then I would print the following properties. Yeah, so this would be our function, and I also need to handle the error case in this, that after the for loop, if not found, if the roll number is not found in the student's text file, what I can do is I can print out that student with the following roll number is not found. Yeah, so this would be pretty much for this function too. I don't think it needs any other functionality. Yeah, so now I would be moving on to the next function, which would be to find the student with the maximum CGPA. It would be the same way in which we find the maximum or minimum in an array. I would be using the same logic over here too. So the relevant arguments in the following function, and now I would be writing the code for this function. So I could declare it a variable maximum CGPA, which would be equals to the zeroth index of the array CGPA index. Yeah. So now we can again declare an index variable and put it equals to 0. So now I will run a for loop that would run from I is equals to 1 till I is less than current size I plus plus. So what I would be doing over here is that I would again be using an if case, that if the CGPA at the ith index is greater than the max CGPA, what we can do is that we would put max CGPA equals to the CGPA at the array's ith index. So this should work, and I also need to put index equals to I. By the way, you basically don't need an index variable over here. I prefer to do things like this so that I avoid any errors, and it's basically easy to debug your program if there are errors at the end when you're running the program, rather than going through each line of code and seeing where the problem is. So now after this for loop, if this is successfully happening, what I need to do is that I need to print the following, that student with the maximum CGPA is. So I would again print the following properties of the student, which I printed in the above two functions. So, so this would be pretty much for this function too, and so there would be no error case in this function, as we need to sort within the file. We need to check within the file, not any input is being taken from the user in this function. So now moving on to a next function, which would be to sort students by name. So to sort the student by name, I again need to pass the relevant arguments for this function. So what we would be doing is that I would be using bubble sort for this function, and I will again run a for loop. By the way, two for loops, as I would be using bubble sort. By the way, this one should run size minus 1. And inside this for loop, I would be running in again a for loop for the jth index that will start from 0, and it will run till current size minus I minus 1. So if you don't understand what is current size minus 1, Like you could also rewrite the same for loop, which would run from till the current size. If you run this from 0 till current size, but over here in this for loop, what you would need to be changing is that you need to run j from I plus 1, and then j would run till current size, and then you would write j plus plus. So this would be the other way for running this the following for loop. So yeah, what I would be doing is that I would be running an if I would be running an if statement that if the name at the jth index is greater than the name at the jth plus 1 index, I would be swapping the following elements, and for swapping I would be declaring another object of type student, and I would it should would be equals to the array's jth index. So what I would be doing here is that now I would be doing is that the jth index of this array of object student of object s would be equals to the jth plus 1 index, and now the jth plus 1 index would be equals to 10. Yeah, so we have swapped the elements. I would also comment out the code over here. Yeah, so we are pretty much done with our for loop. So now I would, after the for loop is executed, I would be printing out a statement that students sorted by name are. So again, I would run a for loop in this case, and I would again print the following as I did earlier in the above three functions. Yeah, so we are done with our pretty much with our functions. So now I would be moving on to our next function, which would be to sort the students by their relevant CGPA. So what I would be doing over here is that I would be using selection sort rather than bubble sort. Yes, this would be our function declaration. So now for this function, what I would be doing is that I would be using the selection sort, and basically I would be doing the same as I did in bubble sort. I would be running two for loops in this case also, which would be the first for loop, which would run from the ith index till I is less than current size minus 1 and I plus plus. So what next would be in this for loop, I would be declaring a variable and minimum index that would be equals to I, and now run a for loop from the jth index, which would be equals to, which will start from the I plus 1 index, and it will run till current size. Uh, yeah, it should run till current size in J++. So now inside this for loop, what I would be doing is that I would be putting minimum index equals to J. By the way, it should not be directly put to J. I need to run an if case that if the CGPA at the jth index is greater than the CGPA at the array's minimum index. So what we would be doing is that minimum index would be equals to J. Yeah, so this should be pretty much our uh, code for this function. By the way, we also need to swap the elements after the following J loop is executed. So I would swap elements. So again, I would be in the same method, uh, variable temp of type student. So it would be equals to the minimum index. And what I can do now is that the minimum index should be equal to the array's index. And just a minute. Yeah. So now the ith index should be equals to temp. Yeah. So we are pretty much done with the swapping of elements in our for loop. So now after the for loop, I need again to print a statement that students with sorted CGPAs are. So I would again be printing out the following, but I also need to in a for loop. So I would should copy it along the for loop. Yeah, so this is our function. There is an error in our code at the start of our program. I need to fix it. It is over here. Yeah, so this is the problem. I need to remove this over here. Yeah, so now our code is error free pretty much. I don't see any errors, just this. Yeah, so now moving on to our next function, which would be to add the new student. So in this function, I would be passing again the same arguments, but the size would be passed by reference rather than by value. So what we need to do in this function is that we need to create a new object of type student, and I need to ask the user to enter the following properties such as entering the name, the CNIC, and then as we would be having spaces in our file, so I need to use the getLine function to cater this error also. But first of all, I need to handle the error case that if the size of the array is full is greater than or equals to the size, what I need to do is that cout cannot add students. Yeah, so now our error case is handled, and now I would be moving on to create. We also need to return from this. Yeah, so now it is done. Yeah, so now I would be creating an object of type student. So the object should be new student. The S should be capital. Yeah, so now I would be asking the user enter the name of the student. So we would be using the scene.ignore function to basically what it does is that it ignores the new line character for each line. So now I would be using the getLine function in which I would be passing the scene. I would be passing the object which we have created, and along with that I also need to pass the original name of the student. Yeah, so we are done with our following with start. So now I should move on to our next function, to our next line, which would be to ask the user to enter the CIC. I don't think that we need a new value. Okay, as it is. We don't need a new line if we are using the dot ignore function. Yeah. Student. Okay, we need to pass the name, not the name individually. I'm sorry. Yeah, so again, I would be, what we would be doing is that I would be calling the getLine function again, and this time the getLine function would have the following argument cin and new student dot cnic. Now we would be asking the user to enter the roll number. So now I would be passing the cin and new student dot roll number. Now we would be asking the user to enter the what is wrong. Yeah, so we would be asking the user to enter the CGPA. So when the user would enter the CGPA, we would call the getLine function and pass it the following cin along with passing the CGPA of type. Okay, so I need to fix some errors too in the above. Yeah, so I think, okay, so what is the error in the getLine function? Okay, it says no instance of overload function getLine matches the argument, but I don't think that there should be an error in this case. Oh, sorry, the roll number is of type integer. The getLine function is only used for type string, so I need to ask the user to enter the roll number. My bad. As the CGP is again of type float, I need to manually ask the user to enter it. So yeah, this should be how it should work. Yeah, so the next thing what we want to ask the student, ask the user is to enter the degree program. So I would again be asking the user to enter the degree program. By the way, we need to also tell him either bachelor's or master's. So if such is the case, we need to ignore, and then I need to use the getLine function and ask and pass the following arguments: student dot program. And now what I need to do is that lastly I need to ask the user to enter the phone number. Yeah, so when the user would enter phone number, I need to call the getLine function, and what I need to do is that I need to pass in and along with phone. Yeah, so now as this would be our prompt when our function runs, we also need to accommodate all these changes in our following array. So by updating, so we need to also update the size and also print that the student has been added successfully. So for that, what we need to do is that what we can do is that I need to update the size, the current size of the array of objects current size should be equals to new student, and then we should increment the current size basically. Yeah, so yeah, the student is added successfully now. So now I need to print that student has been added successfully. Yeah, so this would be our function for adding a new student. Now I would be moving on to our last function, which would be saving students to the file. So for this, I would again be using the same way to declare the following function, which would be the return type, then the name of the class, and then the name of the function. So in this function, what I need to do is that I need to pass and I need to pass the name of the file too, which would be string file name. Yeah, so in this function, what we would be doing is that we would be opening the file in output mode using offstream. Yeah, so offstream out file, and I would be file name. Okay, why is it giving an error? This is correct. Yeah, so this should be fine now. Still an error. Let me check the declaration. Student S and current size, constant string, and file name. Okay, so it needs to be by reference. Sorry. Yeah, so now it should be error free. Yes. So now I need to handle the error case that if not successfully opened, what I need to print is that uh, unable to open the file. So basically, what would happen is that the file would not be able to open for writing. So unable to open the file for writing. And then we also need to return. And now moving on to what our function would be doing actually is that we would be writing to the file the following contents of the file, which would be the name, the roll number, the CNIC, etc. So I would be using our file. So now I would be outputting the name. What is the format? So name, CNIC, roll number, CGPA. Okay. So it should be name. Then we need to print CNIC, and then we need to write uh, the roll number. Now we need to write the what we need to write next after roll number is CGPA program. Okay. So this would be CGPA. The next one, what we need to write is the program, and lastly, what we need to write is the phone. Yeah, so this should be it, and I should place an endline. This would be our headings for our file, and now I need to run a for loop and output all the following for the specific indices of the array. So I would be running a for loop from int I is equals to 0 till I is less than current size and I plus plus. So in this I would be writing to the file. So we would be writing the name of the file, and then after writing the name of the file, what we need to do is that we need to write the CNIC, and now after the CNIC I need to write the roll number, and after the roll number I need to write the CGPA. Now after the CGPA I need to write the degree program, and now lastly what I need to write is the phone number of the student, and then use an endline. Yeah, so this should be it. Now I need to close the file too so that it does not remain open. So I would be using the out file dot close function. So I should also print that students have been saved successfully. Yeah, so this should be it for the functions of our program, and I don't think we need anything else. Now whatever is left is the main function, in which we need to uh, create a menu and also open the file in input mode so that we read the contents of the text file into our following uh, array which we have created. So heading on to our main function. Yeah, so the main function, first of all, we need to declare an array of the objects at first. So now I need to open the file and input in reading mode. Yeah, so if stream in file, I need to write the name of the file, which is student.txt in our case. Yeah, so now after this, what we need to do is that I also need to initialize the current size. So it should be equals to 0. And now I used to need to run a while loop. That while need to use the getLine function in file line. Uh, what I also okay, so it should be, what else do we need to add? I need to use the and. Yeah, so I also need I need a condition that the while loop should run. Uh, Also, if the current size is less than the size. Yeah, so this should be it, I think, for the function for the while loop. Okay, so I also need to declare line as in a variable of type string. This is the error. Yeah, so what we would do in this case is that I would use the string stream, which we included at the start, passing it the line, and now string name, and we had CNIC as type string. We also had program as type string, and lastly we had the phone number as type string. As integer we had only our roll number, and as type float we only had our CGPA. So what next we can do is that uh, I would input read these contents. This is name, CNIC. Then we had our program. Then we had our phone. It should be in order, by the way. Roll number. And after this, yeah. So after this, after roll number, it should be CGPA. Then it should be the program, and then it should be the phone. So this should be it. And now, what I need to do is that I need to access these. The current size dot name should be equals to the name, the current size dot CNIC should be equals to the CNIC with object member variable which we created at the start of our program in our class. So current size dot roll number, it should be equals to the roll number. Then the current size dot CGPA should be equals to the CGPA. After this we need to current size dot program should be equals to program, and lastly the current size dot CGB, yeah, phone number should be equals to phone. Yeah, so this should be it. And now after all of this I need to increment the current size plus. Yeah, so after this while loop, what we need is that we also need to close our file so that we could perform the rest of our operations. Now I can create a variable in choice and now run a do loop. Uh, Simple do loop, not a do while loop. So I can print the menu for my program. So in this, we can ask tell the user the following features we have for our program, which would be show all students. The next one would be to uh, search the student, and yeah, so the next thing what we need to print through the user is our third function, which was to find the student with maximum CGPA. And the next function which we created, which we need to print to the user, is to sort the students by name. Now we need to print to the user to sort the students by their CGPA. And now what we need to print to the user is to add a new student, which would be our second last function. And now lastly, our function which we need to print out to the user is to save the students to the file. Yeah, so this should be it for our menu for this program. What else are we left with is to now ask the user to exit also. So we should print another statement of exit. By the way, I missed the numbering. Should be 6 and this should be 7 and this should be 8. Yeah, so this would be our menu functions. So now in this do loop, we need to ask the user to enter his choice, and then upon the statement, the user would input the choice, and then we would be using the switch case. Yeah, so as soon as the user inputs its choice, What we need to do inside this do loop is that I need to use the switch case and pass it twice. And now for case 1, what we would be doing is that uh, I would be directly calling the following functions. Show all students. I need to pass it the arguments to this and current size. Now I need to break the statement also. And now move on to case number 2. Yeah, so our case number 2 was in which we called the function to search by roll number. So first of all, we need to ask the user to enter its roll number. Missing semicolon. Yeah, so I would ask the user to enter the roll number of the student. So the user would enter the roll number, and then I would call the following function to search by roll number. I would pass it the following along with the roll number too. Yeah, so this should be it for case number 2, and then I need to break the statement. Now moving on to case number 3, which was to find the student with the maximum CGPA. So I would be directly calling the function uh, find the student with max CGPA, pass it the following parameters, break the statement. Moving on to case number 4, which was to sort the student by name, again directly calling the relative function. So now moving on to case number 5, I need to call the relevant function, which was to just an error. I need to put a colon. So now I should call the function sort by the relevant CGPA. I need to break the statement. Now moving on to our second last function, which was to say add a new student. So to add a new student, I would again be calling basically the function directly with the same functionalities. Now breaking the statement. So what we are left with now is case number 7 and case number 8. So for case number 7, I would again be calling our function to save students to file, but it would have different parameters. I would also need to pass the file name in this case, which was student.txt. Yeah, so now it should pretty much work all fine. Our last case was case number 8, so it should just print exiting the program. Uh, I could put ellipses too and put an inline. Then I could break the statement. I missed it. Okay, so and then we can add also add a default case. So default would be if so what the default case would do is that if the user accidentally enters any number other than 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, 6, 7, 8, if he enters any other number from other than 1 to 8, I could print to the user that invalid choice. So add an exclamation mark, and now what I should do is that uh, I should close the switch case, and now inside this do loop I would run a while loop. Yeah, so it would basically be a do while loop. So while choice is not equals to 8, what we can do is that no, by the way, you shouldn't use the brackets. So while choice is not equals to 8, what we can do is that we can return 0. Why is it giving an error? Is it inside? I think so. I've missed the brackets. So it should be blue over here. Yeah, so what we can do now is that our program is pretty much complete. So now we would test our program by running it. Okay, so now I would be saving my program, and I would be running it. So I need to place this. So now I have saved the file and now running the program. Yeah, so our program is working absolutely fine. We have the following are being displayed in our terminal. So using the first option, show all students, as we can see that it is correctly displaying all the students. We could search students by its roll number. So suppose that this student, Zona, she has the roll number 4692. So if we try to search her, so 4692. As you can see, if as I entered the roll number, it has output the correct student with the correct details. So now I would be finding the students with the maximum CGPA. So let's see who has the maximum CGPA in our text file. So the maximum CGPA is of the student named Cindy. She has the CGPA of 4. So now sorting the students by name. So by name, the sorting would work in an chronological alphabetical order. It would sort the students starting from the alphabets A till the alphabet Z. So now entering our choice number 4, and let's see what it does. Yeah, so as we all can see that the last student is Zona, as all above. They are in alphabetical order, and they are sorted correctly. So bubble sort has worked absolutely perfect for this function. Now sorting by CGPA. So as I have used selection sort, so let's see how does it work. So as you can see, it has sorted the students with the CGPA in descending order, well the last one being with a CGPA of 0, and the first one being with the CGPA of the highest CGPA, and then a decrease in CGPA as the text file goes down. So now moving on to our last function, which was to add a new student. So for example, the name is Hussein, the scene IC is a random number, the roll number is 1838, CGPA is 3.1, degree program is bachelor's, phone number is a random one. So yeah, so it says that the student has been added successfully. But we could not exit the program right now because the student has only been added. It is not being saved to the text file right now. So what I would be doing now is that I would be using the option number 7 to save the student to the text file. So now it says that the student has been saved successfully. So now I would be exiting the program. As you can see, it has given us the output that it is exiting the program. So now let me show you with the text file with the added student of with name Hussein and the roll number 1838. So yeah, we have successfully entered a new user, a new student in our text file. So yeah, that's it for this following program. I hope you enjoyed this video, and and I always encourage to build projects after learning something good in C++. So basically what this program revolves around is concepts of OOP, object-oriented programming, and file handling. So you could use the same functionality and the same technique to form any management system, whether it be a hotel management system, bank management system, or a flight management system. But you could play with it by uh, as in this case, I have only used a single class student. What you could do is that you could create multiple classes and develop class relations such as inheritance, composition, and association, etc. So yeah, that's it from my side. I would be posting a link in the description for my code in my GitHub repository, so you could understand it much better in while playing with it on your own. So please like, share, and subscribe my channel. Uh, Thanks a lot, and stay tuned for more cool projects and especially game development, which I would start in the next month. Sure. So that's it from my side. I hope you enjoy programming and keep practicing.